Well, those were my thoughts a couple of minutes ago. Let's find out now what our one reasonable token Bucknut friend has to say. Our good friend Mark Rogers, who has a fantastic channel right here on YouTube you want to check out for yourself, the voice of college football. A lot of great information from correspondents and stringers and analysts across the sport teams all over the country. Good to see you again, Mark. How you been, man?
Steve, I'm doing well. You are on target. There's no question. Buckeye fans like myself have been anticipating this Maryland matchup the entire season, just gearing up for this one.
So, you know, I gave what could be a slightly harsh assessment of what I saw in person in a game that was 34-3. And I just want to restate again, I'm doing this in relationship to beating a top 3 team on the road where you haven't won in 20 years, right? I'm not sitting here and saying Michigan is not a legit top 5-8 team in the country. They are. I'm not saying they haven't proven themselves. They have. The reality is this is an elite program everywhere except the passing game right now. There's not really, I mean, you can find, and when I say there were open receivers, I mean there were more than 34-3. Like maybe it should have been more like 34-14. Okay. So, I mean, I'm nitpicking here, but that's because we're playing the top 1% of college football for the right to play the top 1% of college football here in a couple of weeks. So the margins get slimmer. And there's something else I want to share with the audience and get your take on as well. I looked up these numbers, and this was not the most encouraging thing I've seen recently. So the last 3 games, which is a quarter of the regular season, Spencer Petras at Iowa, 48 completions, 52% completion percentage, 506 yards passing, 3 touchdowns, no interceptions. J.J. McCarthy, Michigan, 36 completions, 54% completion percentage, 447 yards, 5 touchdowns, 0 interceptions. Now, I obviously do not believe Spencer Petras has the same kind of talent and ability as J.J. McCarthy. But what I am concerned about is if we have to play at Ohio State's tempo, I don't think we can do that. Now, I don't know how well you guys can play at ours, okay? But I am concerned that the game script, I think, has to go a certain way for Michigan to win. And the one caveat to what I'm about to all of this is, let me point this out. In play action passing, Michigan, I think, actually has the highest QBR in America. I mean, McCarthy's numbers in play action are incredible. But we're only running like 3 or 4 play action passes an entire game. So that has me wondering if this is kind of like the old days where Bo and Woody are holding stuff back and practicing for each other a little bit all year long. Is if, you know, I know Jim Harbaugh is, you know, familiar with play action passing. I mean, I know that he knows what that is. To only be throwing 3 or 4 of those a game when you're running the ball for 250 yards a game does have me wondering if we might see like 15 of these in a couple weeks in Columbus, if you know what I'm saying, okay? And so I think that you might see that. But if the game script goes Ohio State's way and we have to play from behind, that's where the passing game development, I think, comes into play then, and you're off script. And I'm not confident based on what I saw in person that Michigan can win like that, Mark.
I'm trying to backlog on what opponents were looking at, J.J. McCarthy versus Spencer Petras, but 54% completion percentage over the course of 3 games is pretty alarming, considering that the completion percentage was 72, 73%. It was close to top in the country for J.J. McCarthy. Prior to that, I saw as much of the Nebraska game as I could stomach. There were better games on. It wasn't competitive. It just, you know, without Casey Thompson out there, Nebraska doesn't have a shot against anyone who's decent at all. They've scored like 25 points in 3 games since he was shelved. So I'm going to take it to the bright side, and that's that the Michigan rushing attack is not just good in the mold of Penn State's good. Minnesota with Mo Ibrahim is a really good rushing attack with a good offensive line and an elite back. Michigan seems to be able to run against anyone regardless of and Iowa's an elite rush defense. And it was still, I think, a $140, $145 for Blake Corum against Iowa when they should have been loading the box against him. I don't remember exactly in watching the game how Iowa approached that defensively, but I know they went to Columbus and against Ohio State's rushing attack, and against that passing attack, Iowa still trusted their corners to lock down Ohio State's receivers, so they must have been loading the box up to stop Blake Corum. But that offensive line for Michigan, for being the Joe Moore Award winner last year, they're better this year. Blake Corum's better this year. He's better than Hassan Haskins. He's better than his 2021 self. So that's the positive side of this. Yeah, they just continue to miss these downfield shots. They had 3 or 4 against Nebraska. It always seems as though either receiver and quarterback aren't on the same page in regards to what they saw in coverage. So the ball's thrown to the wrong shoulder, thrown to the wrong side of the field, or JJ just misses it. Now, at some point, he's got to be told this by Jim Harbaugh, former NFL quarterback, that it only makes sense that when you overthrow them, there's no chance that you're going to complete 0%. If you underthrow them, if you try to hit them on stride, but if you underthrow it, let's side on caution. These are not 50-50 balls. They're more like 70-30 balls. Give these guys a shot to bring these things down.
What have you seen in Ohio State's year-long quest to become a more physical team? And your thoughts on the new defensive coordinator, who you will recall, I told you is a great DC. I watch a lot of Big 12 football. I used to own an Iowa State fan magazine. Still have a lot of friends there. But it's not a man ball league at all. Like, it's just not at all. They play better defense in the last couple of years at places like Baylor, Oklahoma State, and Iowa State. They've played better defense than what we traditionally are used to in the Big 12, but it's not a man ball league. His style of defense is actually more of a Don Brown style of defense than, let's play in the mosh pit and slug it out here. So what have you seen from a Buckeye perspective on that front?
Well, the best measuring stick, I think, is Penn State, and Nick Singleton and Kaytron Allen were gashing them, not for big runs, not for 12 and 15-yard runs or anything past that. They were consistently moving the line back, getting creases, getting their 4 to 6 yard gains. That's what they were getting against Ohio State. Ohio State was not stopping the Penn State running game. Ohio State's defense turned out, JT Tuimoloau in particular, turned out to be the difference because of making outstanding plays by 5-star players in certain situations. But on a consistent down-by-down basis, they were getting run on by Penn State in particular. But it's an upgraded defense. There's no question. They are so much better. The front seven is so much better. The linebacking core, this is the best linebacking core at Ohio State with Tommy Eichenberg and Steele Chambers, although they only typically have 2 on the field, unless they may have an option here against Michigan that's going to be interesting to see, because they employed a third linebacker once Dexter Williams, the backup quarterback for Indiana, came into the game to give them another dimension as a running threat. Ohio State went to 3 linebackers with Cody Simon. So they may that could be an option that they mess around with in preparations for Michigan and J.J. McCarthy's running ability. But they still have issues in the secondary. It's a thin secondary based on injuries and just poor play by guys that were supposed to be better coming out of high school. So the secondary's marginal. The front seven, actually the linebackers, the defensive line, based on recruiting rankings and past performance, should be a dominant every down line. But it has its cycles. It has its spurts of dominance. It's not consistently dominant, but the linebacking play has been the most improved unit on the field, both sides of the ball.